Not too long ago, Oatly wasn't just selling a drink, it was selling an identity, becoming a staggering $13 billion phenomenon by mastering the art of scarcity. Their secret weapon was a brilliant marketing move known as the barista strategy. Instead of flooding grocery stores, they launched exclusively in high-end trendy coffee shops, instantly turning a simple oat milk latte into a status symbol. This created a massive fear of missing out, or FOMO, among consumers. Their quirky, self-aware advertising cut through the noise, resonating deeply with a generation tired of traditional corporate speak. By 2021, the market was completely captivated, leading to a mind-boggling $10 billion IPO for a company that had famously never turned a profit. But as they quickly learned, when you build a brand on hype, someone eventually has to make the product, and that's where the story takes a turn. So after creating this incredible, almost insatiable demand, Oatly found itself in a classic execution trap. They simply couldn't make enough oat milk to keep up. The company had bet big on a future of endless hypergrowth, investing massively in huge manufacturing plants across the US, Europe, and Asia. But reality hit hard. The plant-based milk craze began to plateau, and a flood of new competitors rushed in to grab a piece of the market. Suddenly, Oatly was saddled with expensive, underutilized factories that were bleeding cash. To make matters worse, a series of crises struck. A product recall damaged trust, accusations of greenwashing tarnished their eco-friendly image, and a controversial investment from Blackstone betrayed the rebellious spirit their fans had fallen in love with. The stock price collapsed, and the narrative flipped from an unstoppable growth story to a cautionary tale of hype over substance, leaving them in desperate need of a radical change. That radical change arrived in May 2023, right at this fork in the road, with the appointment of a new CEO, Jean-Christophe Flatin. Flatin wasn't a marketing visionary. He was an operations expert with a crystal-clear, and some would say unglamorous, mission: profitability over growth. He immediately implemented an asset-light strategy, which is a fancy way of saying they stopped trying to do everything themselves. Instead of owning massive, costly factories, they began partnering with contract manufacturers, closing underperforming plants, and ruthlessly cutting overhead. This move wasn't sexy, and it came at a cost. Revenue growth slowed, and in North America, it even went backward during the restructuring. But for the first time in 7 years, Oatly was finally on a clear path to profitability, proving that disciplined execution could indeed turn the ship around and set the stage for a quiet comeback. And then, in February 2026, the comeback became official. Oatly announced its financial results, and the headline was stunning. The company had achieved its first full year of profitable growth in its entire history. The numbers told the story of a remarkable turnaround, with annual revenue climbing to over $862 million. But the real magic was in the margins, which expanded to over 32%, meaning they were finally making solid money on every carton they sold. Even more impressively, this wasn't a story of shrinking to profitability. They actually sold 18% more oat milk in 2025 than they did back in the hype-filled days of 2022. Growth was strong across the globe, especially in Europe and China, all while they cut spending and boosted efficiency. Their forecast for the future isn't about moonshot growth, but something far more valuable: sustainable, achievable, and profitable progress. So what can we learn from Oatly's journey through the school of hard knocks? There are 3 critical lessons here. First, hype kills. While it created a massive valuation, it also set impossible expectations that the business couldn't sustain. The real lesson is to build your business on solid fundamentals first, and then layer on the marketing. Second, execution wins. The initial vision was brilliant, but it was the new CEO's unglamorous work of optimizing supply chains and cutting costs that actually saved the company. And finally, the most important lesson: profit is not a dirty word. Oatly learned the hard way that losing money on every sale is not a sustainable business model. Their pivot to profitability wasn't a retreat, it was a maturation. Today, Oatly is a much smaller company by market value, but it's a real, sustainable business that's actually making money. And in a world obsessed with unicorns, that might be the most radical thing of all.